It was supposed to be another search day, another cold morning, another group of volunteers lining the road, another round of hope slowly running out. But before the search could even begin, someone else found her. Near mile marker 40 on Boulder Canyon Drive, 2 park rangers were doing their regular patrol. This wasn't deep into the wilderness. This was not miles off trail. It was very near to established paths, near a drainage culvert beneath the road, near places that had already been searched. And that's where they saw her, lying on snow-covered rocks, partially hidden by the slope, just yards from the culvert. It was Megan Trussell. And so, Megan had now been found. But what no one could understand, not then and not now, was how she hadn't been found sooner. Because searchers had been here before. Search dogs had been here too. Drones had been flown overhead. Volunteers had walked this exact stretch of road. One searcher even later said he had been within 5 feet of where Megan was found. 5 feet, that's 2 or 3 steps away. Megan was still wearing the same clothes. She was lying on her back, one arm stretched outwards. Nearby there were details too that no one could explain. Perhaps most disturbing and confusing of all. She was wrapped up in a black sheet that did not belong to her. At the time, the public did not know any of this, but what they were told, quickly, was that there was no sign of foul play, that whatever had happened to Megan, she did it to herself. At this point, the town thought it understood what had happened, but the truth is, the real story hadn't even started yet. To really understand why so many people are saying, wait, this doesn't make any sense, you really have to go back to Sunday night. This was February the 9th, and that evening, Megan Trussell was in her dorm room at CU Boulder. She was a freshman, a film major, close with her family, known for answering texts quickly, and not someone who anyone thought would choose to disappear. She had plans, school, friends, a partner, a cousin's birthday coming up, a life that was actively blossoming. There would be no goodbye note, no concerning messages to her parents, no indication that she planned to vanish. Megan shared a dorm room with another freshman. Her name was Haley. At first, nothing seemed unusual. 2 college students, a shared space, and a newfound independence. But over time, small things began to pile up. And in hindsight, those small things seemed like they could matter. By Thanksgiving of her first semester, Megan had started telling her mom that something wasn't right. And it wasn't one big fight. Instead, it was a building pressure or tension in the room. Haley often had a close friend staying in a dorm room. We will call them Elle. At first, Megan didn't mind. But Elle was always there. Day after day, night after night. This meant that Megan started to feel like a guest in her own room. She valued her privacy, I think we all do, to be honest. She liked watching movies alone, listening to music and just decompressing. But that space for her was now gone. And when Megan tried to set boundaries, things still didn't improve. There was a whiteboard outside their dorm room, and Megan's mother, Vanessa, had bought a full set of markers, 32 colours, something she could use on the board. At first, it all seemed playful, leaving notes back and forth, jokes, little messages. But then Megan noticed something. Her messages kept on disappearing. They were being erased and replaced. And strangely, only hers were being wiped off. It never seemed to be Haley's. Mother Vanessa later described the replacement as snarky, crappy comments. So it did feel intentional. It was like someone was trying to undermine her, but to do it in a sneaky, quiet way. There were other things too, a strange sense of guilt that was kind of forced upon her. If Megan spent time with new friends, she'd hear about it from Haley. If she wasn't in the room enough, then that was a problem. If she wanted space, it seems that was a problem too. Still though, Megan did not escalate matters as far as we know. She didn't report anything. She didn't cause any scenes. That wasn't who she was from everything I can find out about her. So, Sunday night, February the 9th, this was Super Bowl Sunday. Roommate Hayley was scheduled to work that evening. This meant that Megan could have her boyfriend over. This wasn't anything unusual. He was there until around 9 p.m, when Hayley left work on her break. This was something that she didn't normally do, and so she went back to the dorm room and an argument followed. Hayley was upset that the boyfriend was in the room. She said that boundaries had been crossed for her. I don't believe the exchange lasted very long, and then Hayley went back to work. Not long after, Megan's boyfriend said that he didn't want to be involved in any drama. I believe he suggested that they take a break. He left the dorm room at 9:17 p.m, and what happens next is documented, because we have the text messages. At 9:28 p.m, Megan tried to call Hayley, but she got no answer. Just 1 minute later, Megan sent a message. It said, "I'm so sorry. You won't have to worry about it happening again." Now, I think we can take a few things from that message. 1, we can presume that Megan was alive and well at 9:29 p.m. 2, it could be her literally saying, "Sorry, I won't do it again." 3, she could have been saying that it wouldn't happen again because she split up from her boyfriend. And 4, it could sound like she wasn't coming back, depending on how you read into it. But I must say, to me, it just sounds like someone probably just trying to keep the peace. Someone that was planning to come back, and someone that was thinking about the future and her actions going forwards. But maybe in that moment, she just felt defeated. Hayley did reply to that message. She said, "It's honestly not okay, but it's whatever. I want him gone when I get out of work." Megan then responded, "It's over." Hayley later said that she thought that meant that their relationship was over, and it actually does seem that it was. At 9:36 p.m, Megan left the dorm. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't grab any extra clothes. She didn't dress for the cold conditions, nor did she tell anyone where she was going. Security footage showed her walking alone. Her gait appears normal. There are no signs of panic, no signs of distress. Meanwhile, Hayley finished her shift. She clocked out at 11:29 p.m. and returned to the dorm at 11:37 p.m. By then, Megan was not there. And instead of calling Megan, instead of texting Megan, Hayley messaged her friend, Elle, instead. She told them that she'd had an issue with her roommate and asked them to come over. Elle then arrived and they slept in Megan's bed. This was something that seemed to happen a lot, by the way, which I do find odd, especially if you're talking about boundaries, but anyway. And Megan then never came back that night, or the next. So by now, days had passed, and Hayley did not report Megan missing. She didn't contact her family. She didn't alert campus staff or police. And when Megan's mother finally reached out on February the 12th, Hayley showed no sense of urgency. She said that she hadn't seen Megan since Sunday night, and when Mother Megan pressed her, Hayley said that she'd check the bathrooms. Megan's family knew something was deeply wrong. Nobody had heard from her, and that wasn't Megan. Her father would later say, when she didn't respond, that's when terror set in. Megan's mother later said that she couldn't believe what she was hearing. 3 days and no concern whatsoever. And then when Megan's family arrived at the dorm to look for Megan, they found Elle once again sitting on Megan's bed. Elle was also using Megan's things. Father Joe recalled a moment that stuck with him. You see, the family was clearly in crisis. They were desperately trying to figure out what to do. And it was then that Hayley popped her head in. She was smiling, grabbing something from her bed. She said thank you and left. Megan's father Joe said that there was no recognition for the situation, no gravity to what was going on for her, no awareness that something was obviously terribly wrong. And something else worth mentioning, when Megan did not return home that night, roommate Hayley just assumed that Megan had gone to her sister's. However, she didn't call or text to check, nor did she raise an alarm of any kind. It was only now that campus police were notified, but even then at first they brushed it off. They suggested that Megan was probably couch surfing, but her family knew her better, so they pushed for investigations. Search efforts finally began to ramp up. Security footage was now reviewed, and phone data was finally analysed. And following that, attention finally turned west towards Boulder Canyon.
If you saw the girl with the bright red hair,
Megan Trussell is hard to miss.
She has a very distinctive purse. There aren't any like it, I don't think, because I made it for her.
But CU Boulder police say the film student hasn't been seen since Sunday night at her dorm, Hallett Hall.
Megan was last seen on the video surveillance walking towards her sister's apartment. She didn't go there. She never arrived.
Her mom, Vanessa Diaz, says she talked to her daughter the night before.
Her and I texted a bunch on Saturday evening. One of her cousins is turning 20, and so we were planning for her birthday party coming up next weekend. And Megan was very excited about it.
Vanessa says texts this week have gone unanswered. On Wednesday, Megan's parents realized neither had heard from their daughter. So Vanessa checked on Megan's phone activity through their T-Mobile account.
I saw that there was no activity whatsoever on her phone after 8:45 p.m. on Sunday.
They contacted CU Boulder Police on Wednesday. They're coordinating with other police agencies and the FBI to search for Megan. In the meantime, her friends and family are posting her picture around campus, hoping someone knows something that can help.
And if you see her and she's in distress, give her a hand, report it to the authorities so that we can make sure she's safe.
Later during interviews, Haley told investigators several things. She said that Megan hated the outdoors, that she hated the cold, and that she did not like walking places. Those statements came from the roommate herself, and yet, in the days after Megan disappeared, Haley had been telling co-workers something very different. She actually said that Megan was thinking of opting out, that she had taken a lot of Adderall. But when questioned about this though, Haley denied saying that. Months later, she gave an interview saying that she believed Megan had done this to herself. Another statement that was contradicting what she told police. So there were at least two versions, two timelines, two explanations. Nobody has publicly accused Haley of harming Megan, and me nor this video is doing that either. All I'm doing is just looking at publicly available information. The behaviour, the text messages, the lack of urgency, the contradictions, and all of those are real. They are documented, and they are details that must matter in this case. Because when Megan walked out of that dorm, all she was doing was walking away from a temporary conflict. But nobody that knows her believes that what she was actually doing was walking away from her life. And so, from that moment onwards, everything about this case really stops making sense. In the CCTV footage, it shows Megan walking along campus. She was wearing white platform sneakers, red yoga pants, a black short-sleeved shirt, a light denim-style jacket, her signature purse. What she didn't have was a heavy coat, hiking gear, or a flashlight. On that night, it was 17 degrees outside. Some important things to know and remember too. Megan was afraid of the dark, she hated the cold, she didn't like walking long distances, and she actively avoided hiking. Multiple people have confirmed this. She did not wander around outside for fun. She did not seek out remote areas for some quiet time. And she had never been to Boulder Canyon before. At 9:52 p.m, Megan was seen on camera once again. She was now near the Champion Center, but after that, she vanished. There was no more campus footage.
Since Wednesday, the CUPD reached out to the FBI, a tactic that didn't surprise former Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock.
I think a lot of agencies notify the FBI because they have a lot of resources and they can do a lot of stuff with phones. If her phone's still pinging, and it was pinging off a tower, that's very valuable information for law enforcement, because you can triangulate that and you can get a lot of information about when it was last moving.
Megan's parents tell me that's part of the reason these teams are focused up here in the canyon.
We haven't quite hit any homes or anything that way.
While another team focuses a couple miles away.
Folsom Drive was the area that she was last seen.
Dozens of people who drop what they're doing to help Megan's family, organizing a makeshift command center in the parking lot of the Boulder Library, and sending family friends like David Lamb out to knock on doors.
This neighborhood specifically is where we think it's most likely that she would have been caught on a Ring camera or a security camera. There's a lot of love for that family. There's a lot of love for those girls, both those daughters, and we just want to get Megan home safe.
While the search is frantic, the one thing not hard to find is optimism.
You're welcome. We're going to find her. We are.
Investigators later said that Megan's phone pinged near the mouth of Boulder Canyon at 10:45 p.m. and then again much deeper into the canyon at 11:55 p.m. That second ping was near mile marker 40. This is 3 miles from her dorm, in freezing temperatures, in the dark, along a highway. This is past the areas that students are told to avoid. And of all of those details, there is something that people keep coming back to. A phone ping does not necessarily mean that the person holding the phone was its owner. It only means that the phone was there. Her mother, Vanessa Diaz, later wrote, "Knowing my daughter, I don't believe she wanted to be out that night. I think she just didn't want to be in the dorm when the roommate came back." Mother Vanessa believes that Megan was looking for somewhere familiar, somewhere close, somewhere safe. But Boulder Canyon isn't any of those things to Megan, and nothing about Megan as a person points to her wanting to go there. By the time Megan was reported missing, valuable time had already passed. And as we know in cases like this, time really does matter. Because what happened after Megan walked off campus is where the story completely falls apart. Because next comes the search, the covert, the items that didn't belong to her, and the evidence that raises the questions that no one seems to be able to answer. If this was something that Megan had chosen to do to herself, then why does so much of it look like someone else was involved? By February the 13th, multiple agencies were now involved. There were drones, search dogs, volunteer teams, and they focused on the area near mile marker 40. This was a place that Megan's phone had last pinged. On that day, a volunteer searcher noticed something strange, a drainage culvert beneath the highway. It was large enough to crouch inside, and it was known locally as a place where unhoused people sometimes stayed. So he checked it. 8 feet inside that tunnel, he spotted an empty prescription bottle. At the time, he assumed it belonged to someone else, so he just put it back and moved on. Now 2 days later, February the 15th, more than 130 volunteers were gathered for another day of searching. These included Megan's parents. Snow began to fall from the sky, and then suddenly, the road was closed off. Rescue vehicles appeared near mile marker 40, and at first people hoped it was just weather-related because of the snow. But then people realised that it wasn't. At 10:30 a.m, 2 park rangers looked down a steep slope, and they saw a body lying among snow-covered rocks, just yards from that same culvert. And it was, of course, Megan.
Moments ago, the Boulder County coroner confirmed that the body they found over the weekend was that of 18-year-old Megan Trussell. They first reported the body found matched her description, however, did not positively identify her until now. She was reported missing last week. They still have not released the cause of death.
She was found on her back, one arm extended out, one arm tucked inside her jacket. She was wearing the same clothes that she'd left campus in days earlier. However, something was wrong. Her right shoe was missing. She wore only a torn black sock. Her purse was gone, her phone was gone, and there was debris under her fingernails. There was a broken stick near her arm, and beneath her body were a pair of grey trousers. They didn't belong to her. In fact, they didn't match anything that she even owned. For all of this evidence that could be called strange, no explanation was given. One deputy on the scene noted something else. He said it appeared that Megan's body had been covered by a black tarp or blanket. Later though, that detail would be disputed. But about this, Megan's mother was adamant. She said she did not leave her dorm with a blanket or tarp. I know my daughter. She would not wrap herself in something taken from trash or left behind in the culvert. So here's where the questions really start piling up. Searchers had been in this exact location. Dogs had been deployed. Drones capable of filtering colours, including red, which Megan was wearing, were flown overhead. Volunteers had been walking past this exact spot. Yet somehow, Meghan wasn't seen. From the road, her red pants and colourful hair should have stood out. Snowfall before that day had been minimal, and one volunteer even later said that they'd been within 5 feet of where she was found, and that was 2 days earlier. I don't know about you, but I'm questioning whether Meghan was moved there from somewhere else. I mean, it's hard to make this make sense. Inside the culvert, investigators also later documented between 6 and 10 small drops of red DNA. They were fresh in colour, although dry, so they were swabbed. Nearby, they recovered that prescription bottle once again, and this time they actually read the name. This bottle belonged to Meghan. Meghan always carried her medication with her. She didn't want to leave it in her room, especially not when she knew that other people had access to her room. Her parents were clear about this. Still missing at that time was her phone, her purse, and her second shoe. Days later, however, her phone would surface. It was sold at a resale kiosk. Weeks later, her purse would be found miles away. This was near another culvert.
Loved ones say Meghan's purse was found a week ago along US 36, southeast of Table Mesa Drive near the Dry Creek Ditch number 2. That's a few miles away from where her body was discovered.
Her mom made that purse for her specifically. Meghan loved that purse. You never saw it out without her. We also found out that it was ripped. Just it being ripped from the clasp was weird to us. I don't know if there was some kind of struggle going on, what the situation was, but it doesn't make any sense.
Her family also says they've been searching for the other shoe Meghan was wearing.
She only had one shoe when she was found, which was news to us this week. It doesn't make any sense how she would have walked so far from this location to that location and where she ended up being just because her shoes are tall. She's a tiny little gal, but when she puts her shoes on, she's taller, and 3-inch platforms would be hard to walk on with one on.
Meghan's family is urging anyone who may have seen something suspicious to please speak up.
I don't want one of these to be one of those cases that goes on for years and years.
Yeah.
We need that closure. We need to get justice for Meghan.
She's always here, right? The thought of her is always on my mind, and it's on everybody's mind.
The conversation about Meghan Trussell's disappearance hasn't stopped since she went missing back in February.
It comes up with everybody.
It was a conversation between Meghan's mother, Vanessa Diaz, and a nonprofit for missing persons that inspired them to do something new.
We connected with Haley Gray, who is part of the Gabby Petito Foundation, but they're the ones who suggested the essentials bags.
Essential bags they will hand out to the unhoused community in Boulder.
People in the unhoused community might not be watching the news.
Inside the 200 bags are daily items people can use and information about her daughter's case. Vanessa says it was an unhoused person that helped them find Meghan's phone.
And I saw firsthand, just her talking to people and asking questions, and that led to the phone.
She hopes the unhoused community in Boulder could be the key to learning new details about what happened to her.
There's just too many questions. She's missing a shoe. Her purse was ripped.
Vanessa says she will never stop talking about her daughter.
Getting out there and asking questions and talking to people.
Making sure Meghan's story never goes quiet.
Actually is what gets answers and what uncovers the truth.
So the questions remained. Why were strangers selling Meghan's things? Why were her belongings so scattered? Why was her body placed in a location that not only had she never visited, it didn't seem like she'd want to? Why was she found somewhere where people had already searched? And why did the scene include items that didn't belong to Meghan? With all of this information together, obviously it sounds like something suspicious had occurred. But no, authorities said that she simply did this to herself. But standing in that canyon, with snow falling once again, Meghan's family knew one thing. This story wasn't over. In the days after Meghan was found, her parents waited for answers. Originally, they were told that there were no signs of trauma, that there was just a scratch, and that scratch was possibly from a branch. That's what they were led to believe. But then, the final autopsy report arrived, and with it, everything changed. Meghan's body did not show one minor injury. It showed many, some of which I wouldn't describe as minor. There were so many injuries, in fact, that the list filled almost an entire page. From head to toe, there were injuries to her head, injuries to her face. There were broken teeth, including a missing canine tooth. There was extensive bruises, scrapes. marks that were not explained by a simple fall. And that damage raised an obvious question. How does someone that just walked through miles of frozen terrain end up with injuries this severe? Her parents were clearly stunned, because what they'd been told earlier on, it didn't match what they were reading now. And then came the toxicology reports. Investigators said that Megan's time was ended from the toxic effects of her medication. Hypothermia was also listed as a contributing factor too. And bearing in mind they now had all this evidence, how could you possibly accept that authorities said Megan did this to herself? Megan had been prescribed Adderall for years. She used the extended release medication. She took this at a standard dose. She also had a smaller, immediate release prescription, and this was approved by her longtime doctor. This is not unusual, especially for students, and the amount that was found in her system was not publicly described as extreme. Also notable was that only a small portion of her stomach contents were tested, not the entire thing. And well, somehow things get worse still. No fingernail scrapings were tested, no SA kit was conducted, no additional forensic testing was pursued. And just as a reminder, that is in spite of broken teeth, missing items, an array of unexplained injuries, a torn sock consistent with dragging, belongings scattered miles apart. But the case was closed.
251 pages.
I put this all in a spreadsheet.
All carefully organized and marked.
How many hours have you spent going through this?
I don't even know. I mean, it's like a full-time job.
It's a job that no parent would ever wish for, reviewing their daughter's death investigation.
Megan was very smart, very funny. She listened and she was there for people all the time.
The easiest way from point A to point B for them was to prove it was suicide. I mean, they followed up on a few leads. We know that. We appreciate the work that they did do. But they just didn't do enough of it.
The coroner says she died because of the effects of amphetamines and hypothermia. Her parents not only dispute the cause of death, but are frustrated with how the case was handled. At one point, they found Megan's missing cell phone before law enforcement.
Vanessa and her friends were basically lapping the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. They were doing a better job. They were finding more evidence.
The Boulder County Sheriff's Office declined to interview, but shared a statement in part, quote, "It is standard practice for our agency to limit public comment in cases involving suicide." But another Colorado official is speaking on Megan's case, State Senator Janice Marchman.
I've asked for the Attorney General to take this situation, my unique experience as a legislator and then someone who walks side by side with the family, and let's try to figure out under this lens what we can fix.
Marchman's daughter also goes to CU and lived near Megan on campus. The senator now working on new bills to address how evidence is logged, how families get information from police, and giving options to loved ones that may dispute a cause of death.
We're going to make something happen here so that we can prevent this for other families in the future.
But for Megan's family, they're working to get what was in her stomach tested and a private autopsy review, something community members have donated to support.
That really gives us a lot of strength to work through something so difficult as this.
As a family searches through hundreds of pages for answers on how to grieve their daughter.
Megan's family was told the investigation had taken longer than hoped, and that the conclusion they were given was final. Authorities said that there was no further threat to the community, but as you can imagine, the family weren't alone in their doubts. Subsequently, outside experts reviewed the circumstances and said something very important. They believed the outcome of this case should have been undetermined. Instead, closing the case locked everything in place. Because once a situation like this is labelled as self-inflicted, the investigation effectively stops. Megan's mother Vanessa would later write, "That's deciding the ending, before the story is even told." And there is also one more detail, one that you really can't ignore. Megan's body, according to early reports from a deputy, was seen wrapped in or draped under a black tarp or blanket. That detail was later disputed by authorities, but it was never fully explained either way. And if that is true, if Megan was meant to have met her end all alone, then who covered her up? And why would they do that? By late spring, her family were begging to be taken seriously. They wanted an independent review, a fresh set of eyes on the case. Eventually, state agencies did agree to review the case, but this was not a new investigation, just a review. The passing of time did not mean the questions simply went away. If anything, they were only multiplying. And at the center of all of them was a single and uncomfortable thought. If Meghan did not choose for any of this to happen, then who did? Once the ruling was released publicly, people did not just accept it and move on. Instead, people stopped believing the authorities. Students on campus believed the same thing, that this did not make sense. And Meghan's family understandably refused to let it all end quietly. Within days, vigils appeared near Boulder Canyon. Candles, flowers, stuffed animals, and Diet Coke.
The CU Boulder student reported missing last week, and then on Monday, her family and friends gathered to honor her legacy and create a memorial.
I believe that Meghan is in a better place. I'm kind of a spiritual guy, and I've had signs that she's okay, and that's making me okay. We're never going to get over it. The grief will last the rest of our lives, and we're different people now, and I understand that.
Her father stood out in the cold and said, "It's a terrible thing that's happened, but the best way we can honor her is to get better, to find out what happened." Mother Vanessa was more direct. She didn't mince her words. She didn't soften the important message that she had. She said outright that the investigation was mishandled, that conclusions were reached far too early, that key steps had been skipped, and slowly, through the efforts of the family, others started saying the same thing. Even more questions started spreading online. Why was her purse found in another culvert, but weeks later? Why was one shoe never recovered? Why were the injuries downplayed? Why wasn't additional testing done? And maybe most troubling of all, why did officials tell the family they believed that no crime had occurred, even before the final autopsy report was delivered? Delivering news like that at that time, it sets a narrative, and it's hard to undo. Meghan's family weren't asking for outrage. All they wanted was transparency. They were asking for accountability. They were asking for a second pair of eyes. So when the review took place, it was acknowledgement that their concerns were legitimate. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that Meghan was Indigenous, and that news, if you watch a lot of true crime, it will probably mean that everything's happened up to this point really doesn't shock you. However, under state law, cases like Meghan's require additional scrutiny when circumstances are disputed. Her family also took their fight public in a really unexpected move. Meghan's family went to CrimeCon. They spoke to investigators, to journalists, to anyone willing to listen. A reward on the case was announced, then raised and raised again. Because someone out there knows something. I mean, they must, because this just doesn't make sense. And whether that something is big or it's seemingly small, one detail can change everything. Meghan's story isn't just about one night or one ruling. It's about what happens when authorities close ranks instead of open doors. Because even now, her parents are still asking the same questions they always have been. If this was self-inflicted, why does it take so much effort to ignore everything that doesn't fit?
It's a new semester at CU for students. And an annual event is underway, this time with a somber tone for one family.
She was here for her parents' weekend last year. Yeah, Meghan was participating in the event.
For Vanessa Diaz, it's not a warm welcome to the school year.
Every time I come up to Boulder, I get a feeling of panic, and I just worry so much for the kids that I see walking on the path that Meghan walked on, and I just think, you never know. I'll never know what happened exactly to Meghan, especially since they are investigating. But maybe we can prevent it from happening again by spreading awareness.
Meghan's family believes by sharing her story, more people will see what they do. Awareness that starts with parents on Pearl Street.
It's not going to bring her back, but I really want that justice for her.
Justice, her mother Vanessa says Meghan deserves.
What I would like is for Boulder County and the city of Boulder to recognize and acknowledge that something very horrible happened to Meghan.
By now, you know what officials say happened. But what probably matters more is what they're not explaining. Let's start with the timeline. Meghan leaves her dorm at 9:36 p.m. She apologizes to her roommate minutes earlier. "I'm sorry, you won't have to worry about it happening again." Her phone then pings near the mouth of Boulder Canyon at 10:45 p.m. Then again, deeper in the canyon at 11:55 p.m. After that, there is nothing. No calls, texts, or no known movements. Now consider the terrain. Frozen ground, pitch black, off trail, a hidden culvert, jagged rocks. We know that Megan had no phone with her body. No flashlight, no headlamp, no working light source at all, actually. Then there's a missing shoe that was never found. And the sock that was on that foot. It was clean in a way that it hadn't been walked on. But there was, however, a single tear on the heel. A tear that appears more consistent with dragging than walking. Then there's the location. Her body was found near a culvert already searched, within just a couple of steps where volunteers had stood days earlier, in an area scanned by drones and dogs. And yet no one saw her even 2 or 3 steps away. Then of course there's a misrepresentation of the injuries, of damage all over her body and to her teeth, injuries that were later described by authorities as consistent with a fall. But there is no explanation for where a fall that big could have occurred. There was also the red DNA inside the culvert. Those have never been explained. The grey trousers under Megan's body, they weren't hers, nor were they ever identified. Was she wrapped or covered by a black blanket? That has never been resolved either. So even with all of these holes in the story, authorities were confident enough to close the case. But if that conclusion is solid, then why has there been so much resistance to re-examining it? Why not welcome an independent review? Why not test and retest every piece of evidence? Why not explain the obvious contradictions clearly? In my eyes, in Megan's case, the doubt here doesn't come from conspiracy for conspiracy's sake. It comes from inconsistencies, and this case is really full of them. We can all theorize what happened to Megan that night, but I guess really that's not the point. The point is, if you have been listening, even with one ear while you're doing the dishes, you've probably caught yourself thinking, wait, this doesn't make sense. And once you see that in a case, you really can't unsee it. The case, Megan, her family and friends, all still demand answers. Because whatever happened to Megan Trussell, the story that we've been given does not explain it. Let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments.
We were supposed to get married and spend my whole life with Rachel.
Do you think that she was targeted?
I do, 100%.
At 2:07 a.m. on a warm Arizona night, a 911 dispatcher picked up a call that would stay with her forever. "I've been hurt," the voice said. It was 19-year-old Rachel Hansen. She was barely conscious, alone in her Gilbert apartment. "Someone broke in and hurt me," she said. Her voice was clear, controlled, but urgent. She begged the dispatcher to hurry. Then, almost like she was realizing it for the first time, she told them just how hurt she was. There was no one else in the apartment with her. The dispatcher asked if she could press a towel or shirt against the wound. She responded, "No. Rachel, I need you to stay with me. Talk to me." Rachel said, "I can't." The line was quiet. Her attacker was already gone, vanished into the night. There were no security cameras, no witnesses, and no one clear reason why anyone would want to do this. But strangely, this wasn't the first time that someone had come into Rachel's room uninvited. But the first time, they didn't bring a weapon. They brought something else. A strange, and I mean very strange, kind of warning. Something you will have never seen before. Something that you could never guess. Rachel Hansen lived alone in a third-floor unit at the district lofts in Gilbert, Arizona. This was just 3 miles from her parents' home. Inside the unit, Rachel's bedroom door had been kicked in, but the front door, that showed no signs of forced entry. At first, the police were left wondering, did the killer have a key? But the origin of the story of the front door started just a few days earlier. This is a haunting detail in a case filled with them. Another haunting detail was that this was not the first time that someone had opened their bedroom door in the middle of the night. The first time, they brought pickles. Yes, you heard me right, pickles. Just 4 days before she met her end, Rachel sent a text message to her fiancé. It was May the 31st, 2022, just after midnight. Rachel had woken up suddenly. Someone had opened her bedroom door. They had stared at her, then they closed it and walked out. No words were exchanged. By the time she got up to check, they were gone. But in the kitchen, sitting on the counter, was a jar of pickles. This was a jar that Rachel had not purchased, and in what could have been a real sliding doors moment of this case, Rachel did not call the police. She told fiancé Joe that she thought it was probably one of the people who used to live there, her former tenants from when she subletted the flat. These would be the people that she had just asked to move out. You see, Rachel had been subleasing her apartment for months to a couple that she found online. According to multiple sources, though, they'd filled the place with random guests, they partied late into the night, and they caused concern among the neighbours. Some people even believe that they were selling illicit substances from that unit. Rachel, ever independent, she didn't tell her parents too much about this. But when she moved back into her apartment on June the 1st, this was just 3 days before she met her end, she found that the place reeked of green to the point that she just couldn't ignore it. She had to scrub it all down, open the windows, replace furniture. It really sounds like they trashed the place. The lock to the door was broken, so Rachel did what any sensible person would do. She changed the locks. Or at least she tried her best. According to her mom, Kim Hansen, the lock that she and fiancé Joe installed only latched from the inside. This means that if you forgot to lock it before bed, that anyone could just open it and walk in. So this might be exactly what happened on the night of the pickles. And then again 4 days later on Rachel's final night. We don't know exactly why Rachel didn't file a police report about the pickle incident, but perhaps it was because she was focused on moving in, on restarting her business, and on dealing with an even more immediate crisis. Her horse had just been stolen. Rachel's horse's name was Dash. She had raised her from a young age, trained her by hand, and she posted videos of her progress for her clients to see. To Rachel, Dash was not just a horse. She was family, and she was pregnant too. But now she was gone. On May the 31st, her father Todd got a text message. This message was from the owners of the ranch where Rachel had been working and living before moving back into the apartment. The ranch where Rachel had recently been fired from. Father Todd had just loaded up Rachel's belongings. He was on his way back to pick up Dash, and he texted the ranch owners to let them know that he'd be arriving soon. Their reply: "No need to come, the horse has been removed. Contact our attorney." Dash had now vanished from the property. There was no explanation, no forwarding address, if horses have them, and later on, the ranch owners would demand $7,500 to return Dash. They were claiming that Rachel owed the money for a failed horse trade and for a $950 breeding fee. To Rachel and her family, this felt like a kind of ransom. All of these things together meant that Rachel was having a tough time. She'd really been spiraling. Losing the job had shaken her confidence. And now Dash, her most prized companion, was gone too. Kim, Rachel's mother, later said she was in full panic. She felt violated, betrayed, and she was terrified she wouldn't get Dash back. Rachel started blasting posts across social media, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that people in the equine world might see them. But then the threats started. She would receive anonymous messages, fake Facebook accounts. They were demanding money. It's still not 100% clear if these were connected to the ranch owners, to the previous tenants, or to someone else entirely. But what we do know is that Rachel was being harassed online by somebody, or maybe multiple people, and they wanted something from her, something that they believed she owed them. When police later searched her devices, though, they reportedly found nothing unusual. According to the lead detective, Rachel was squeaky clean. There were no risky messages, no drama, no criminal activity. But that doesn't mean that everyone around her, everyone she came into contact with, was clean too. Just hours before she met her end, she told her mother on the phone, "Everything's finally getting better. I feel safe here." It seems that she truly believed that, but now we know she was wrong. On the evening of June the 3rd, 2022, Rachel was in her apartment with fiancé Joe Met. They ordered food, watched a movie, they swam in the complex pool, they talked about their future. Rachel had big plans for her horse training business. She was also licensed to sell real estate. Her horse Dash, although missing, she did know she was pregnant, and that was something that she wanted and that made her happy. Her 20th birthday was also just 9 days away, and earlier that day she'd spoken to her mother on the phone. She said, "I love you, Mom. I'll see you Sunday. You can help me finish moving in." Nothing seemed off to anyone involved. Rachel was tired, she had a lot to do. But for the first time in a long time, things had started to feel manageable again. Around midnight, Joe got ready to leave. This is because he had to be up early the next morning. As he slipped out, he gently woke Rachel and reminded her, "Hey, get up and lock the door behind me." Rachel mumbled okay. She rolled over, but she must have just gone to sleep. She did not get up. And because, as we know, the front door had to be locked manually, it did not secure itself when Joe left. Sometime after Joe left, between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m, someone entered the unit. The front door showed no signs of forced entry, but why would it? Because we know it was unlocked. They crossed the quiet apartment, they stepped into Rachel's hallway, and then they kicked open her bedroom door. Neighbours didn't report hearing anything. No raised voices, no struggles, not even a deafening blast. Whoever entered her room pulled the trigger only once. The bullet travelled through Rachel's abdomen and out through her upper shoulder. She was likely still lying on her back in bed. The shooter left immediately, and it seems they took nothing other than the shell casing. Otherwise, they said nothing, left no evidence, and maybe most frustrating of all, there was no CCTV footage. This is for two reasons. The apartment complex had no cameras in the hallways, and what few cameras they did have on the property, they were fake. Somehow, Rachel got up. She crawled from the bed to the bathroom. She picked up her phone and she dialed 911. "Someone broke in and shot me." That was the first thing that Rachel said to the dispatcher. She gave her address, told them that she was alone. The dispatcher asked her to stay on the line. They also told her to apply pressure to the wound. "Do you have any kind of clean cloth? Is there a towel or a shirt near you?" Rachel replied, "No." The dispatcher asked again, "Are you close to any kind of cloth you can use?" Once again, she responded, "No." Then there was a period of silence. The dispatcher continued, "Rachel, I need you to talk to me, okay?" Rachel said, "I can't." She was found on the bathroom floor just minutes later. First responders arrived fast, under 5 minutes in fact. Doctors then worked on her for 3 hours at the hospital in Chandler. However, they couldn't save her. It was June the 4th. She'd been home for just 3 days. She would turn 20 in 9 days.
This goes through my mind all the time.
Jomette Bailey was her fiancé. He says for someone who is so full of life and love, he can't make sense of it.
This caused so much pain. You know, we were supposed to get married and spend my whole life with Rachel. And now I just have to live with just the fact that she's not here.
Rachel told police she didn't know the gunman. Authorities are investigating, but with few answers. Loved ones are begging for any clue as to what happened.
And we just can't understand it because she was so young and so full of life. And had so much life ahead of her.
On that night, in the worst of circumstances, Rachel had done everything right. She called for help. She spoke clearly. She stayed awake. But the 911 transcript, when it was finally released, was not enough for her parents. "We wanted to hear her voice," her mother Kim said. "We wanted to hear her last words. The actual ones, not just a redacted page." Instead, what they got was almost nothing. A 350-page police report, heavily redacted, with no arrests made.
I was not looking for it, didn't expect it.
Rachel Hansen's mom, Kim, surprised to see the police report in her daughter's case sent to her from Gilbert Police.
Rachel shot in her own gated Gilbert apartment back on June 4th, 2022. Body cam video from the early morning call released about a month ago, along with the 911 transcript from the call Rachel made herself. But now we're getting a first look at the over 330-page police report, which details what investigators learned through interviews and search warrants.
I was shocked when I saw it in my email. And it is what we expected in that it is very redacted.
The report details multiple strange things in the days before the shooting. Rachel moving back into her apartment she had been subletting. A leasing agent at the Gilbert complex reporting neighbors making a noise complaint, saying multiple people were yelling in Rachel's apartment around that time. A maintenance worker later discovering the unit's locks had been changed. The report also saying Rachel told her fiancé she woke up to someone inside her apartment, but they ultimately left.
My first reaction was, why didn't you call the police that night?
Kim remembers Rachel telling her this over 2 years ago.
But she just thought it was somebody that was friends with the people that had the apartment prior to her moving in. And so it startled her and it frightened her.
Parts of the report mention possible persons of interest. It also details Rachel's change in job and her mental health struggles. In February of this year, the case marked inactive. The report says all leads exhausted.
I am feeling more confident than I was initially. Maybe just because some things are happening.
These pages, now another piece of the puzzle. Recently, a private investigator, Justin Yentes, taking Rachel's case. The teen's parents also working to raise the silent witness reward being offered for information.
We want justice for Rachel, and so we're just hopeful that everybody working together can reach that goal.
ABC 15 is working to get our own copy of that report. We did reach out to Gilbert Police on Tuesday.
For 2 years, that was all there was, except for one detail buried in that report, something that almost nobody noticed at first. 6 weeks before Rachel passed, she had been threatened by someone her parents hadn't wanted to suspect.
Rachel's friend of several years, Hayden Smith, was one of the last people to speak with her. Smith tells me she has been in direct contact with detectives about her friend's death. Do you think that she was targeted?
I do. 100%.
6 weeks earlier, a call came into Gilbert Police. It involved Rachel, her fiancé Joe Met, and Joe's father. According to records, and confirmed in interviews with Rachel's mother, there had been an altercation. Rachel was physically pulled from a car by Joe's dad. And, almost unbelievably, he reportedly yelled at her, and he said, "If I ever see you again, I'll kill you." Police were obviously called, a report was made. So when Rachel placed her 911 call on June the 4th, local police knew exactly who she was. They knew her name. They knew that she'd been recently threatened with death. But even now, no arrest has been made. Rachel's family is quick to point out that they don't believe fiancé Joe had anything to do with it. They say he was kind, devoted, and still goes to their house for dinner. But what about Joe's father? What about the threats? What about the couple who subleased the apartment? What about the ranch owners who demanded that ransom? All those doors to knock on, and yet no one has been charged. I find it so shocking that Rachel was getting a hard time from so many people. The stress that she must have been feeling, it must have been huge. And then somehow things reached their final conclusion, and her time was ended. For nearly a year, the investigation was listed as suspended due to lack of leads. It was only after public pressure and a media push that Gilbert PD reopened the case. They've since released the redacted police report. They've released heavily blurred body cam footage, and that's pretty much it. Rachel's parents, Kim and Todd, they have now stopped expecting any answers. Now they expect nothing. We just have to resolve ourselves to the fact, Kim said, that we may never know who took Rachel's life. They do though still feel her presence there with them. They even started Rachel's Rescue. This is a dog rescue that has now rehomed over 300 animals. They named Dash's foal Danny, D for Dash, A-N for Anne, Rachel's middle name, and Y after the horse's father.
Out in the Hansons' backyard, something was born from the pain. An animal rescue in Rachel's honor. Dogs playing freely.
Don't chase them.
A new litter of puppies commanding attention. goats and birds offering much-needed joy.
Oh, they're just so loving.
And of course, Rachel's prized horse Dash,
Ready to eat, huh?
who now has a foal in tow.
I did not see myself being in the business of horse training again at this age.
Rachel's happy place, a sanctuary for all the animals that she loved.
I would do anything for her.
And a sanctuary for her mom.
Hanging up here is a wind chime. Every time I hear it, I just feel Rachel's presence.
Todd got the date of Rachel's death tattooed on his arm. Kim's tattoo quotes Rachel's favourite song, "In Oceans Deep, My Faith Will Stand." The reward for information in her case currently stands at $15,000, but it seems that either nobody knows or they're too scared to come forward. Whoever pulled that trigger at 2 a.m, whoever walked into that corner unit and did this to Rachel, they may still be living in Gilbert. They may still have contact with the family. What do you think happened here? Let me know down in the comments. And also specifically, what are your thoughts on those pickles being left in the apartment? Really strange.
Hi, my name is Mark.
And I'm Melissa Casillas.
We're from Blue Creek Outfitters in Taos, New Mexico.
When Melissa Casillas vanished, she did not take her car. She did not take her wallet. She did not take her identification. She did not take her personal phone or her work phone. Both of those were left behind. Both had been factory reset. Her home was locked. Her car was parked outside it. There were no signs of a struggle. There was no note. There was no message. There was no explanation. Just hours earlier, Melissa had been out running errands. She had delivered lunch to her daughter. She had said, "I love you." She had walked out of a cafe in Taos like it was any other day. The last confirmed sighting of Melissa Casillas shows her walking alone along a rural highway. It's not known where she's going. Nobody knows why she left everything behind. This case really is perplexing. Why would a woman with a job, a family, and plans for the weekend simply disappear? In this video, I will share with you 8 pieces of surreal evidence that make this case truly disturbing. Melissa Casillas was not only familiar with the outdoors, she ran a business called Blue Creek Outfitters with her husband. This business sold hunting equipment, and it also organised guided hunting expeditions for paying clients. This required extended time spent in remote terrain. It also required planning, endurance, and practical survival knowledge. So Melissa regularly and confidently operated in outdoor environments where help was not immediately available. She was experienced in walking long distances over uneven ground. She understood weather exposure, hydration needs, and physical pacing. Family members described her as capable and self-sufficient. Her father stated that she could survive outdoors for days if necessary. This background is significant when considering her last confirmed sighting, but we'll get to that in a minute. I just feel that this context is really important to the wider case, and as we go on, you'll see that it opens up a few more options. The unanswered questions do not begin after Melissa vanished. There are some from that morning. At around 6:15 a.m., Melissa drove her husband to Los Alamos National Laboratory. This was part of their normal routine. Both of them worked there, and surveillance footage showed Melissa's vehicle entering the laboratory property. Under normal circumstances, she would then continue on to her own work location. But that did not happen. Instead, her vehicle was recorded leaving the property shortly after arrival. Later that morning, Melissa returned to the family home in Ranchos de Taos. When daughter Sierra woke up at 7:30 a.m., she was surprised to see her mother home once again. Melissa explained this away though, telling her daughter that she had forgotten her work badge. She said that she would work from home or handle errands instead. Sierra at that time had no reason to question that explanation. Nothing about Melissa's demeanour seemed unusual. She was behaving normally, she was speaking calmly. She hugged her daughter goodbye before Sierra left for work at a cafe. Later, strangely, husband Mark said that he believed that he had seen Melissa use her badge that morning at work. He even stated that the driver must present a badge to enter the facility, and that driver was Melissa. This detail might seem kind of small, but it does become significant after we know Melissa disappeared. At the time, Melissa's explanation was accepted. Melissa did not mention any emergencies. She didn't mention any conflict. She didn't say that she would be unreachable later in the day. In fact, by mid-morning, she was expected to return the shared vehicle, but she did not. Late in the morning, Melissa drove into Taos. She stopped at a Subway restaurant. She purchased lunch for her daughter, and then shortly before 1 p.m., Melissa arrived at a cafe where daughter Sierra was working.
At some point, she took a break and picked up Subway and dropped it off for her daughter, my cousin Sierra, at the coffee shop where she works in the Taos Plaza area.
The visit was only brief. They spoke for just a few minutes, and according to investigators, that conversation lasted from approximately 12:50 to 12:57 p.m. Melissa handed the sandwich to her daughter. Sierra described her mother as calm. She did, however, say that she may have been a little quieter than usual, but nothing about her behavior caused any alarm. There were no visible signs of distress. There were no overt cries for help. There was also no indication that Melissa was planning to leave town. After the sandwich was handed over and the conversations were wrapped up, Sierra gave her mother a check. That check was meant to be deposited at the bank. Melissa accepted it, and she agreed to deposit it. She told her daughter that she loved her. She then walked out to the cafe. CCTV footage later confirmed that Melissa left the area shortly after. That moment would become the last time that anyone in her family spoke to her directly. At the time of the lunch delivery, Melissa still had access to her vehicle. She was still moving around freely of her own free will. She was still interacting normally with people that she knew. As far as everyone knew, this was still a normal day. Melissa dropping a sandwich off to Sierra, it showed that just 1 to 2 hours before she vanished, Melissa's day was still looking routine. So, what changed after she said goodbye and walked away? By early afternoon, it was confirmed that Melissa was not at work. The explanation that she'd given in the morning was now raising more questions than answers. Why did she leave the lab? Why did she return home? Why was she giving different explanations to different people? And why did a normal routine day turn into a nightmare? By early afternoon, communication with Melissa had begun to fail. Her husband had expected to hear from her about transportation home from work, but that communication never came. When Melissa's supervisor called, asking whether she was okay, concern escalated. Until that moment, her sudden absence from everyone's lives had not been fully understood. Multiple attempts were now made to reach Melissa directly, but calls went unanswered. Text messages went unread. At approximately 1:30 p.m., Melissa's husband contacted their daughter to ask if she'd heard from her. Sierra said that she had seen her mother earlier in the day. She was then asked to message Melissa directly. So, Sierra sent a message to Melissa asking whether her mother would be picking up her father or if he needed to arrange another ride home. Now that message showed as read, but there was no response. At the time, this did not immediately alarm Sierra. She believed that her mother would just respond later. As the afternoon progressed, the lack of communication became more noticeable. At around 2 p.m., her husband attempted to call again. When he then tried to phone his daughter, Sierra was unable to answer his calls because she was at work. But when she was finally able to listen to her voicemails from her father, she heard the concern in his voice. He told her that he had still not heard from her mother. So, Sierra attempted to message Melissa again. This time though, the message did not even deliver. This change marked a clear turning point. The phone was no longer receiving messages at all. Whether it was turned off, disconnected, or disabled was unknown. What they did know was that contact had now stopped altogether. From this point forwards, no direct communication from Melissa was ever received again. This concerning silence became one of the few markers in a timeline that was otherwise uncertain. It also narrowed down the window of when something had changed. When Melissa didn't respond to messages, concern began to grow. By mid-afternoon, her husband still had not heard from her. Her daughter Sierra left work and went home. Melissa's car was already there. It was parked outside the house as if she had returned home normally. The doors to the home were locked. Nothing appeared to be broken or disturbed. Inside the home though, Sierra immediately noticed that something was wrong. Melissa's keys were on the table. Her work phone was also on the table. So Sierra searched the rest of the house. In her mother's office, she found Melissa's purse. Inside that purse was her wallet, her identification, as well as her personal phone. When Sierra checked the phone, it did not show any recent activity. In fact, it showed a factory reset screen. This means that that phone had been completely wiped. The same thing was true for Melissa's work phone. Both devices had been totally cleaned. This means no contacts were visible, nor were any messages or call history. Something's just happened that I find really odd. It's not very often that I actually kind of feel a bit shaken doing this stuff, but something weird has just happened. So I've been working on this case for the last few days. And yesterday I was looking through the social media of Blue Creek Outfitters. That's the hunting business that Melissa and Mark own together. Part of their social media is their YouTube channel. On that channel, there was quite a few videos where Mark and Melissa are talking, and I found it really interesting. For instance, there was one video called The Good, the Bad and the Ugly of Social Media. And it seemed like they weren't completely happy with the way that people were talking to them online. It did seem like it was quite stressful for them and like they may have been upset about it. So I was going to include some of that in this video, and I was going to continue looking at other videos as well, just to try and understand a bit more of a background about the case, a bit more about Melissa, maybe a bit more about Mark and the family dynamics as well. Who knows where the key to these cases is? We don't know. It could be something small, and it could be something, and it often is something that's been there all along. But sadly, I didn't download any of the videos. It's worth noting as well that these videos didn't have many views at all. Like basically nobody watched this YouTube channel. However, since I watched these videos yesterday, but before I downloaded them, they've all been taken down from the internet. And that's kind of got me thinking, is it possible that whoever's in charge of that YouTube channel, they saw that somebody was watching the videos, but they didn't want those videos to be watched, or maybe they didn't want them to get out there? Now, believe me, I'm not making any accusations at all, but I find it strange that those videos have been up a really long time before and after Melissa went missing. And Melissa's been missing since June of 2025, remember? But straight after I watched those videos, now they've gone. Now, I don't know, but when I piece that together with the phones being completely wiped, to me it kind of just paints a strange picture of like erasure of something being hidden. I really don't know, but I wanted to update you guys because weirdly it's kind of shaking me a bit. But back to the main video we go. Sierra also found the check that she'd given to her mother earlier that day, a check that had not been deposited. Nothing that Melissa would normally take to leave town was missing. Her vehicle remained in the driveway, her personal items remained in the house, and that house was otherwise undisturbed. These discoveries changed the situation from confusion to pure fear. It meant that a woman had left her home without the tools that she needed to function in daily life. It also meant that she'd taken the steps to erase her digital information. So this combination of things raised immediate questions. Was Melissa planning to be gone for only a very short time? Or was she maybe planning to not be found at all? At approximately 5 p.m, Melissa's husband returned home. After seeing what Sierra had found, he contacted the police. Melissa Casillas was reported missing that evening.
New Mexico State Police, this is Tomas.
Yeah, this is Mark Casillas. You know what? We cannot locate my wife. We haven't heard from her all day, and this is not like her. She doesn't do this, much less leave without her phone and contact people. And I mean, she even left me walking. Well, not walking. I had to get a ride with one of my friends. I'm just out of it right now. I'm just trying to figure this out.
That's fine. I have an officer on the way, and they're going to go speak with you. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
From that moment forward, everything known about her movements became limited to what could be reconstructed, so detectives had to investigate all of the clues that Melissa had left behind. Once Melissa was reported missing, investigators began reconstructing her movements outside the home. The most critical question was whether anyone had seen her after she left Taos Plaza. A tip came in later that day from a family acquaintance. He said that he'd seen a woman matching Melissa's description walking along State Road 518. The location was in Talpa, several miles from the family home, 3, I believe. According to his account, the woman was walking eastbound along the highway. At first, he says he did not immediately recognize her, and it was only after seeing her a second time that he really believed it was Melissa. Investigators worked to verify this sighting. Security camera footage from a local business later confirmed it. That footage shows Melissa walking eastbound on NM 518 at approximately 2:18 p.m. She's wearing a light-coloured shirt, jeans, and light-coloured tennis shoes. She is carrying a backpack. The footage does not clearly show her facial expression, so perhaps a vital clue is missing. Investigators stated that it was difficult to determine whether she appeared distressed. She was, however, walking alone. No one is seen walking beside, behind, or in front of her. No vehicle is seen stopping near her in the recorded footage. This video became the last confirmed visual record of Melissa Casillas. The family acquaintance also reported seeing a blue Dodge pickup truck in the area. He believed that the truck may have been following Melissa as she walked. However, it's important to note, law enforcement did later locate this truck, and they did identify the driver. The police then stated that the truck and the driver were cleared and were not involved in this case.
A family friend even saw her walking along the highway. He turned around to see if she needed help, but then all he saw was a blue truck driving by. No Casillas. Her family thinks she got into that truck. Her family says her personal belongings are all still at home, including her phone, which had been factory reset.
Really wasn't dressed for the mountains, and I mean, she has the gear, so she would have definitely taken something like that.
Investigators emphasized that whilst the blue truck had been ruled out, the possibility that Melissa may have entered a vehicle later was not fully dismissed, nor whether she'd have done this on her own, or by force against her will. So, after 2:18 p.m, there are no confirmed sightings of Melissa. No additional camera footage has surfaced showing where she went next. No verified witnesses have come forward placing her anywhere else. The highway where she was last seen, that leads towards rural terrain and forested areas. It also leads towards routes that do connect to other towns. So with plenty of options from that point forward, her movements become unknown. The investigation now depended on understanding how Melissa arrived at that location on the highway. It needed to know what had happened in the hours before she was seen walking alone. When Melissa Casillas was reported missing, law enforcement classified her as a missing endangered person. Search efforts began almost immediately. Ground teams focused on State Road 518. Search dogs were deployed along the roadway and surrounding terrain. Volunteers from the community joined organised grid searches, and large sections of Carson National Forest were covered. Rivers, streams and rural areas near the highway were searched as well. Hundreds of acres overall were examined. Despite the scale of the search, nothing directly linked to Melissa was ever found. Law enforcement stated that Melissa may have left on her own accord, but they also stated that foul play has not been ruled out. Nobody has been publicly cleared in the investigation.
News 13 spoke to Casillas' niece, who says they are desperate for answers.
We're now over 7 weeks in. The police are still taking this very seriously. They're still investigating. They're still looking for her. The state police have her listed as missing endangered. So that means that there's enough reason to believe that she is or was in danger, and the police are still on it. And no suspects have been cleared.
As the days after Melissa's vanishing passed, family members began to review Melissa's records. They discovered that she had been dealing with stress that they did not fully understand at the time. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, investigators identified financial strain as a possible source of pressure. Court records showed that Melissa had been involved in multiple civil legal matters. Some of those cases involved defaulted bills and breach of contract. In several filings, both Melissa and her husband Mark were listed as defendants. There was also an ongoing legal case tied to a car accident involving their daughter. Melissa and her daughter were named as plaintiffs in that lawsuit. Family members have said that the case was expected to result in financial settlement, but that settlement didn't happen. In fact, the lawsuit was dismissed on the scheduled trial date in February of 2025. According to relatives, that dismissal came as a significant blow. Family members later said that Melissa had been counting on that money. Investigators have not publicly detailed how the funds were intended to be used. They've also not stated that any wrongdoing occurred in relation to the case. But it has been confirmed that Melissa was under financial stress at the time that she disappeared. Her husband and daughter later stated that some of the pressure was not fully known to them. They described discovering financial issues only after she went missing. This context is part of why investigators have not ruled out the possibility that Melissa just left on her own. At the same time though, financial pressure alone does not explain key elements of this case. It does not explain why both of her phones were factory reset. It does not explain why her wallet, identification and vehicle were left behind. It doesn't explain why there has been no confirmed trace of her since the afternoon that she vanished. The financial strain does provide context, but it doesn't provide any answers. Some believe that this explains the disappearance, others disagree.
And though there's been an extensive search effort, not much has shed light on what happened to Melissa Casillas. News 13's Chandler Farnsworth has the details.
It's been 9 days since Melissa Casillas went missing. She was last seen near Talpa, just southeast of Ranchos de Taos. Her disappearance spurred large search and rescue operations and has prompted the involvement of New Mexico State Police.
Thursday, June 26th.
And so that's the last that we know about where she was that day. No positive news right now. We're really just trying to kind of keep it top of mind for people in the area.
Her family says Casillas is an administrative assistant with Los Alamos National Laboratory and had went to work that day. They say she forgot her badge, which she needs for security clearance, and decided to work from home. Her family says Casillas later took lunch to her daughter at the John Dunn shops in Taos and left the shops just before 1 p.m.
She got back in her car, she left. We have surveillance footage that shows what she was seen last wearing.
A tip came in later that day saying that someone saw her walking alone on foot on Highway 518 in Talpa and was seen on neighbors' Ring doorbell cameras, later verified by family from the clothes that she was wearing. The family says that's the last time she was seen. Since then, hundreds of volunteers, family members, and law enforcement have spent hours searching for Casillas.
We created some large maps of the total search area. We divided that into quadrants and then sub-quadrants. So we had 16 grid areas where we sent volunteers.
The family is offering a $5,000 reward for information that leads to finding her.
The family asks the public to contact New Mexico State Police about any information that could lead to Casillas' safe return. Back to you.
So, did Melissa choose to leave? Was she maybe walking to clear her head and then abducted? Is she still out there, somehow, surviving in the wilderness? With no new confirmed sightings, no new communications, no clear answers, we're left wondering, does anyone know what happened to Melissa Casillas? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.